So, what if the scraps from making your favorite tomato sauce could actually help grow even better tomatoes? It sounds kind of crazy, but that's the amazing idea we're digging into today. We're going to see how a bit of clever science is turning a massive waste problem into a powerful solution for farming. To get a sense of just how big this is, let's start with a number. 10 million tons. That's how much tomato waste, we're talking stems, leaves, all the unused bits, is produced every single year in Turkey alone. And they're only the third biggest producer in the world. It's just a staggering amount of organic stuff that usually just gets tossed. And this whole situation creates a couple of huge problems for modern farming. On one hand, we really lean on chemical fertilizers to get the kind of crop yields we need. But on the other hand, the process itself creates these literal mountains of waste. It just doesn't feel right, does it? It feels like a broken system. And that brings us to the brilliant question that a group of scientists in Turkey asked. What if we're looking at this all wrong? What if these two problems could solve each other? What if all that tomato waste could actually do the job of the chemical fertilizers we rely on? Or maybe, just maybe, do it even better. Well, the secret ingredient to this whole idea is compost. Now, this isn't just about letting stuff rot in a pile. It's a very specific process where microorganisms go to work, breaking down all that organic material and transforming it to this incredibly rich, nutrient-packed conditioner for the soil. It's really the ultimate recycling program, turning trash into treasure. Okay, so having a good idea is one thing, but you've got to prove it works, right? So the scientists set up this really carefully controlled experiment in a greenhouse to put their theory to the test. Let's take a look at how they did it. So for 125 days, they ran this tomato trial. They got a bunch of pots, filled them all with the exact same soil, and planted the same kind of tomato seedling in each one. Then they split them up. Some pots got the standard treatment, just chemical fertilizer. Others got different amounts of their new tomato waste compost. And here's the important part. Some pots got a mix of both. Then, all they had to do was watch, measure, and wait. And when those results finally came in, well, they were genuinely surprising. Get ready for this. This was the first big shocker. The pots that only got a high dose of the tomato compost, they actually grew more tomatoes than the pots that got the standard chemical fertilizer. We're talking a yield that was over 15% higher, just from using waste. That right there is a game changer. But hold on. That wasn't even the best result, not by a long shot. The single biggest harvest, the hands-down winner, came from the pots that got a team-up, a low dose of that tomato compost plus the chemical fertilizer. The result? A massive 28.9% increase in yield over the standard method. So they didn't just add together, they worked together to create something way more powerful. And this table just lays it all out so clearly. Look, chemical fertilizer alone gets you about 0.83 kilograms per pot. The best compost-only application? That bumps you up to 0.96. But check out that combination, 1.07 kilos. So the huge takeaway here is that it's not about totally replacing chemicals, but about using this organic waste to make them work smarter, not harder. So that leads to the next big question. Why? What was this compost doing that made such a huge difference? Well, the answer wasn't just about adding nutrients. It was about what was happening underground, in the soil itself. You see, you can think of chemical fertilizers as like giving a plant a quick vitamin shot. It's a direct dose of food. But the compost was doing something totally different. It was fundamentally changing the entire environment the plant was living in. It was improving the health of the whole soil ecosystem. To figure this out, scientists measure something called microbial biomass carbon, or MBC. Now, it sounds super complex, but it's really just a way of weighing how much life is in the soil, all those billions of tiny bacteria and fungi that are absolutely essential. The more MBC you have, the more alive and healthy your soil is. And the researchers themselves put it perfectly. They said the presence and activity of these microorganisms are direct indicators of soil vitality. In other words, this microbial life isn't just a nice little side effect, it's the whole point. And across the board, the compost just supercharged this tiny world. They saw more CO2 coming from the soil, which is literally a sign of all those microbes breathing and working hard. They measured a huge jump in that microbial biomass carbon we just talked about, and the activity of key enzymes. The little engines that make everything happen in the soil went way, way up. The compost was literally bringing the soil back to life. So let's just zoom out for a minute and think about what this really means. Because this isn't just a neat trick for growing better tomatoes, it's about a whole new way of looking at things. What this study shows so perfectly is that our whole idea of waste is often just a failure of imagination. These tomato scraps weren't an endpoint, something to be thrown away. They were the starting point for creating a richer, healthier, and more productive way to grow food. This is the idea of a circular economy in action. Instead of the old straight line of produce, consume, and throw away, you create a loop. The byproducts from one cycle become the essential fuel for the next one. It's smarter, it's more sustainable, and as this experiment proves, it can be way more effective. And you know what's also great? This knowledge isn't locked up behind some expensive paywall. The study was published under a Creative Commons license, which means anyone, anywhere can access it, share it, and build on this research. It's just a perfect example of science working to solve real problems for everyone. So all of this leaves us with one last powerful question to think about. This experiment showed how to turn 10 million tons of tomato trash into agricultural treasure. It really makes you wonder, what other valuable resources are we throwing away every single day just because we haven't learned to see them for what they really are?